Ew.
So this is going to be a little different kind of video for me. A few months back, 23andMe approached some of the science YouTubers and said, we like what you guys are doing and we want to support it. And I'm extremely picky when it comes to sponsors, but I've been following them for a long time and they said I can make a video about whatever I wanted. So I spent the past few months reading some books and talking with a bunch of people about the future of medical technology and what that has to do with my super cool mom. So if you stick with me, I will save you some time and wirelessly transfer those nuggets of information from my brain into yours. And before we talk about some of the crazy futuristic stuff, let's talk about some of the more near-term trends. And to do that, we need to go back in time to the year 1440. And at this point in history, the literacy rate was at 5% because only the elite scholars and ruling priests could read, and they wanted to keep it that way because they thought that the common people weren't smart enough to learn to read, plus they wouldn't be able to interpret the scriptures on their own. But then, one of the most influential inventions of all time came from a guy named Johannes Gutenberg with a movable type printing press. This meant you could suddenly mass produce books instead of copying them by hand, which led to an explosion of things to read, and the literacy rate skyrocketed, which democratized knowledge, giving power to the masses and not just the ruling few. And when it comes to medicine and healthcare, we're seeing a similar shift from the power and knowledge being held by an elite few to the masses because of technology. Setting aside the obvious examples of being able to learn more about any medical condition via Google, which can be a good and bad thing, and I'll address that later, we have technologies like the smartphone, which when combined with this, can give you an FDA-approved medical-grade EKG machine whenever you need it. Then it will analyze your heart rhythm within 30 seconds and tell you if it's abnormal, or similarly, this simple device attaches to your smartphone to become a video otoscope, which is super cool and kinda gross. You could save these videos and share them with an actual medication prescribing doctor on your phone via FaceTime. I actually used this myself last week when I was sick, and for a lot of people it's free with no copay because it's way cheaper than an office visit for your insurance company. Along those lines, this isn't the hospital room of the future. This is. So you do all the recovery from surgery in your own home with sensors in your bed to monitor sleep, and smart pill boxes to make sure you're taking your medications, wearable tech to monitor things like heart rate or oxygen levels. But now instead of just getting readings once a week when you visit the doctor, you are constantly collecting data, which can lead to better diagnosis when you do consult your doctor or apply some kind of machine learning algorithm to search for warning signs. And the coolest part is you own and have access to all of this data. So there's an initiative called Open Notes, started a few years back with 22,000 patients who had full online access to their medical records and lab results. They could even view and edit the notes taken by their doctors during an office visit. And one of the big concerns was that if you give patients this much information, they won't know what to do with it and it will just cause more anxiety. Which sounds a little bit like 500 years ago when the scholars and priests thought that normal people shouldn't be allowed or even capable of learning to read. And yet here we are today with literacy rates up to 99%. And the results of the study were equally impressive, with better adherence to medications, more accurate diagnoses, and 99% of the patients and doctors said they wanted to continue after the trial. So the point of having access to all this information isn't to replace doctors, but no one knows you better than you, so you should be a key part of the team. So that's sort of the near-term outlook, and next I want to talk about some of the more super futuristic medical technology stuff, but in order to bridge the gap between the two, I'm going to Mountain View to talk to the CEO of 23andMe, Anne Wojcicki.
We allow people to get access to their genetic information very easily. And then with that, you can learn about your health and your ancestry. And when we launched, it was kind of seen as crazy. Like what is your DNA? Why would you want it? What are you going to do with it? Since the inception of this company, we've had this idea that it should be yours, you own it, and it should be affordable, and it should be accessible.
And I should just mention, if her last name sounds familiar, it's because her sister is Susan Wojcicki, aka the CEO of YouTube. So yeah, they're a family of underachievers. And after hanging out for a few minutes, it became clear that Anne isn't your typical billionaire CEO either.
Actually, recently just tried to rollerblade to work.
Oh, you did?
I was like, everyone's really gonna make fun of me? Like they already make fun of me?
My wife won't let me leave the house with my blades on.
Oh, I'll rollerblade with you.
Okay,
That'd be fun. I actually have been thinking, how do we bring it back?
Besides Anne's rollerblading ambitions, what I really like about 23andMe is they're not passively waiting for the medical community to come around.
We let people get a taste of what is it like to just get information on their own to learn things about themselves. And I think more and more you're going to start to see that. The same way you keep track of your social security number, you keep track of your banking information, you should keep track of your genome. And when you pay for it, then you own it.
One of the things Anne also mentioned was that as you come to understand your own genome, you can create specific personalized medical treatments. In fact, some hospitals are already doing this for cancer patients to understand which treatments would be most effective without a bunch of painful trial and error. And so in the future, when you go to the pharmacy to pick up your prescription, it will be personalized for you based off your DNA for maximum effectiveness. Now, looking even further ahead into the future, if we continue at today's rate of development, it's predicted that in 25 years, we will have computers 100,000 times more powerful than a smartphone, the size of red blood cells. So they could be injected into the bloodstream as biosensors to detect heart attacks or to identify and even destroy cancer cells. And some people think it's weird that we will start to become part robot, but that's already a thing. People put pacemakers in their chests. We've got hearing aids and cochlear implants, vision correction, prosthetic limbs, and titanium hips. We already augment our bodies through technology with wonderful outcomes. And as a result of the over $115 million donated by the Ice Bucket Challenge, researchers had a major breakthrough where they identified for the first time a gene associated with ALS, which is the first step toward a possible cure with advancements like CRISPR, which is a new breakthrough way to directly edit DNA. So in the future, you could potentially identify and then delete any cancer markers in your DNA. This would obviously be a slam dunk and unethical not to use on someone. But what if you're able to identify the genes associated with being overweight, or intelligence, or having a full head of hair, or attractiveness? Those get to be trickier propositions. We'd have to come to some kind of worldwide agreement and regulation, which may sound hopeless, but it's worked in the past for big world problems like repairing our ozone layer or the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So in conclusion, is the future good or bad? I think it depends on your outlook. When you look back through history, you could see the wars and the violence and the oppression, or you could see the discoveries and accomplishments and the progress of human rights. I tend to be a half glass full type of person, so you plan for the worst, you strive for the best. And I think I inherited my optimistic attitude from my mom. Growing up, she was always my biggest cheerleader. And speaking of Ice Bucket ALS genetic breakthroughs, she actually passed away from ALS 6 years ago, which was 6 months before I made my first ever YouTube video. So while the future will never be perfectly clear, you'll have a hard time convincing me that we shouldn't continue pushing forward, doing everything possible to make diseases like ALS something that my kids will just read about in their history books. Thanks for watching.